I remember when I was like 16 years old and I heard a quote in the intro of a DMX song. To live is to suffer, and to survive is to find meaning in the suffering. Now, eventually I learned it wasn't DMX who said that quote. He was quoting a German philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche. Regardless, I've always remembered that quote because it kind of prepared me for a reality of life. That life's tough. It's gonna be a struggle. Doesn't matter what your sex is, or your age, or your race, or your social status. Life's hard. And you have to find something worth fighting for. You have to find something worth holding on to. And so that's the topic of this video. What is the meaning of life? How do you even figure that out? Where do you even start? I've always dealt with this question about the meaning of life and finding my purpose, but it really started to become sort of an issue in my life about 6 years ago. I was finishing college, I was trying to find consistent work, I wasn't making enough money, and I just noticed that every day I would wake up just kind of dreading what was to come. And that's when I kind of knew something was going on. Have you ever had that feeling where you're just sitting there thinking to yourself, what am I even doing? Is this it? Is the rest of my life going to feel like this? Just working to pay bills? What's the purpose in this? What's my purpose? There's this invisible pressure to have things figured out as adults. Time doesn't slow down to wait for us. So I feel like that's where the anxiety really started coming from. This feeling like we're not far enough ahead, regardless of whatever age you're at. I felt a bit comforted one day when I was scrolling through social media and I came across a meme that summed up my feelings perfectly. It said, how to adult, and then showed this character shopping for a tie, and then he's cooking macaroni, and then doing a little workout, and then it showed him sitting in a chair saying to himself, don't let existential dread set in. Don't let it set in. And then resuming life again, vacuuming and doing whatever he was doing. It was actually the first time I heard that term, existential dread, and it resonated with me so much. So from that point forward, I spent hours watching videos and reading up on articles, really trying to understand what this meant. And I realized that's what I was having. I was having an existential crisis. If you're not familiar with the term, the definition on Wikipedia is pretty good. Existential crises are moments when individuals question whether their lives have meaning, purpose, or value. It may be commonly, but not necessarily, tied to depression or inevitably negative speculations on purpose in life. Now I want to be clear. The existential frustration I was feeling wasn't something I was going through every single waking moment of every day. To be honest, you get so distracted by the daily grind, you don't think about it. It was after getting home from work and having time alone and just sitting down after the exhaustion of going throughout the day, putting on that daily act out in public, that I'd sit home and just clear my mind and really contemplate on this thought, the meaning of my life, the purpose of this existence. There's a belief called nihilism, which suggests that life is without objective meaning or purpose. I often feel like it has a certain pessimistic, downer feel to it, so I'm not really a fan of that. Instead, what I subscribe to is what is called optimistic nihilism. That crappy, empty feeling that comes with existential dread can be countered with optimistic nihilism. If life has no inherent purpose or meaning, then we have the freedom to decide what we want it to be. We have the opportunity to explore ourselves in the world around us. We have the rare privilege as part of nature to think for ourselves and try new things, and learn and develop passions and contribute to the world in ways uniquely suited to us as individuals. Nothing else in nature has that freedom. Or at least I haven't met a dog or a tree that has consciousness and free will to ponder its own existence. So the difference between nihilism and optimistic nihilism is that nihilism is more like, man, nothing matters. Life has no meaning. Whereas optimistic nihilism is like, nothing matters. Life has no meaning. So I get to create meaning for myself. So yes, life naturally has no meaning, but life can be and is meaningful, and it's you that gets to assign that meaning to it. If you're watching this video, I have to assume that you've at some point struggled with this idea of finding meaning or purpose in your life. Maybe it was in your past, maybe it's right now, but if that's the case, there's no better book I can recommend to you than a book by Viktor Frankl, and it's called Man's Search for Meaning. He's a psychiatrist, and in the book he shares his experience surviving and struggling through Nazi concentration camps and World War II. He documents his observations and methods that he used during the Holocaust to create meaning in his life that ultimately allowed him to survive through these terrible conditions. He shares a story about how he turned this absolute struggle into a meaningful experience. His family all got thrown in gas chambers, yet he was able to pull meaning from the experience. He shares that ultimately you can find meaning in life through 3 different ways. First, by taking action and doing things, or by experiencing something or meeting someone, and third, by the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. In his case, he had no choice but to start with the third way. And in some ways, maybe we don't either. Here's the thing though, in order to search for meaning, you have to be willing to take steps before you even know where you're going. The only reason I ever found deep meaning in creating content like you're watching here now is because I decided to try doing it long before I ever really had an interest in it. Believe me when I tell you, I never had any aspirations about being a filmmaker or creating videos. I started out by just wanting to share things that I had found interesting and learned with friends. And then eventually I decided I wanted to document it. So I'd make Facebook posts and I'd make little videos online. And then it got to the point of buying a camera and recording them. As I began to go through the challenges of speaking on camera and hearing the sound of my own voice, which is, till this day, it's still a little weird, I'm not gonna lie. But as I started doing that and putting myself out there to be criticized, I started realizing I really like storytelling. I really like merging the topic of personal development with the style of filmmaking. Before I knew it, I was finding other people, other creators online, making videos with the same kind of topics and themes that I wanted to create. And that inspired me and was sort of proof of concept to me that this is something that I can do. When it comes to this concept of finding meaning and purpose in life, it's common and very easy to just be able to throw up your hands and say, well, there's nothing I'm really interested in. But the reality is, finding meaning in your life is not a passive task. The goal is that through living and through experiencing, you'll find meaning. And as you take action, that will change, that will progress, and you have to adapt. But you live and you learn. When you do that, I think the incredible realization is that the journey is the destination, but you don't realize that until you've done it and then you look back on it in hindsight. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. Really try to find meaning in the moment. One thing I've found is that it's best to not focus just on yourself or just on what makes you happy. Because if it's not serving or bringing value to the world, you probably won't find true meaning in it. Where you'll find meaning ultimately at is at the intersection between what you are interested in, what you like, what you're good at, or what you can be good at, and what brings value to the world. Or even if it's just bringing value to one person. And once you found that, you'll find purpose and meaning. And even when you got that, it doesn't mean that you won't question what you're doing at times. It doesn't mean that you'll always be happy. It doesn't mean that it won't be hard at times. But that comes with the territory. Life is a struggle. Life is about decisions. So how do you find meaning in life? If you ask me, you have to meet meaning halfway. And how do you do that? You just have to put yourself out there and let meaning fill that gap. Try new things, like difficult things. Experiment with activities, travel, seek out novelties. That's what it means to meet meaning halfway. And eventually you'll cross paths. Unlike the feeling of pain, where someone with previous experience can tell you what you can expect, like if you were to touch fire or poke yourself with a needle, no one can prepare you or even anticipate what will give you a sense of meaning or fulfillment until you've done it. So get curious about life. We're living in a time period where we can start learning and exploring practically anything. We have access to the combined knowledge of humankind in the palm of our hand. Literally. Also, I think it's important to understand that what you find meaning in might not be the thing that you make a living off of. It's very possible that whatever you find purpose in is something that you do maybe a couple hours a day or a couple hours a week around your career. And if that's the case, that's fine. Most people do that. And it doesn't have to be unique. For example, you might find meaning in being the greatest parent that you can be, or grandparent. Maybe you want to be a scuba dive trainer. Maybe it's being a teacher, an artist, creating music, creating videos, doing something to contribute to the world in that way. Whatever it is, the possibilities are endless, and that's for you to figure out. To me at least, it appears that life has no true meaning. But to be completely honest, I wouldn't want to have it any other way. Imagine if you were born into an existence that had a pre-established purpose that you couldn't waver from. You'd have no ambition or room for dreaming in life. Your sole thought and focus would be on fulfilling that predetermined purpose, like a freaking ant or something. I don't want that shit. Not me. Not me. Being able to choose and change what gives us meaning as we progress through it is what makes life worth living in the first place. Just remember, it's okay if you don't know the meaning of your life. It's okay if you never confidently have an answer to that question. The reality is that a lot of people A lot of people live very exciting, fulfilling lives without ever being able to articulate what the meaning of their life is. There's a lot to be said for living in the moment and just following your gut on the decisions you make throughout your life. As a matter of fact, as human beings, it's completely natural to be led by intuition. Man does not simply exist, but always decides what his existence will be, what he will become the next moment. By the same token, every human being has the freedom to change at any instant. I hope I've given you some things to think about, and I would love to continue this conversation down in the comments. So please let me know, what are your thoughts on the meaning of life? Do you have things figured out in your life yet? If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate if you hit the like button below. It helps support the channel, and the way YouTube is these days, they want to see that you hit the like button to show that you like the video, and then they'll show it to more people, which I really appreciate you doing. Thank you. If you want to see the next video and be notified, hit the subscribe button below, and I'll see you there.